Hello and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up today, some members of the mainstream media have finally stopped holding water for Governor Jay Inslee when it comes to his frequent, repeated, creative lies over what exactly is leading Washington state to have the highest gas prices in the nation. So we'll be joined by Todd Myers of the Washington Policy Center, who has debunked another one of Governor Inslee's myths that he's been out spinning. Also, better late than ever for conversations on whether we should rehire workers who were fired over the vaccine mandate. There is just such a conversation happening in the King County Council today. We'll dive into that. Also, since Nicole's back, we'll be talking about another country music story, this time the unbelievable outrage over a Jason Aldean music video that some are saying is in support of lynching. We'll watch the video, we'll talk about the lyrics and the history of the location where he taped that music video. Also, we got to play some new clips of wishful thinking, President Joe Biden. I don't like making fun of the man, but age is not Joe Biden's problem. Age is not Joe Biden's problem. We'll talk about that coming up. If you have not become a subscriber to the show already, please do so. Help us grow this mission and this movement to give common sense a comeback. It's just $5. undividedpod.com. undividedpod.com. Okay, let's start with the issue of gas prices. It is the summer. People are traveling more. Gas prices are still in Washington state the highest in the nation. They have been that way for a couple months now. It is, of course, because of the carbon tax that Democrats in Washington passed. They promised it wouldn't lead to a major increase in the cost of fuel at the pump for you. Of course, that was a lie. They knew it would. And as soon as the program began, we started to see these really severe spikes at the pump for consumers. So I will say I blamed not just politicians in Washington state for lying about it, Democrats, the governor, Democrats in Olympia, the Department of Ecology, but I blamed the media for buying hook, line, and sinker into this narrative that it would be just pennies. It would be just pennies at the pump when you had people like Todd Myers, who we'll hear from momentarily, with the Washington Policy Center, who said it's not going to be pennies. I mean, if you talk about a whole lot of pennies, 45 cents to 46 cents per gallon was his estimate. He was off by just 1 penny. So the some members of the media, more liberal outlets that have been in the past providing cover for Jay Inslee and Democrats who voted for this policy, are now starting to acknowledge that, yes, in fact, the carbon tax is leading to the increase at the pump. The Seattle Times had an article. I didn't love some elements of the article. It said, while gas prices top nation as lawmakers take aim at oil industry profits. I hate that headline because it acts as if oil industry profits are the problem, which, as we'll explain momentarily, is not. But in the article, they acknowledge a March invoice reviewed by the Times showed that an oil company had added a line item listed as cap at the rack, a reference to the state's new program of 52 cents per gallon of diesel purchased by a fuel distributor, which trucks wholesale fuels to gas stations, construction companies, and homes around the state. That amount is similar to estimates from industry and academic sources. So an acknowledgement that the estimates that conservative think tanks gave for what the carbon tax would do is spot on for what it's doing. So that acknowledgement from the Seattle Times. Also, shock of the century, Crosscut, which is a very progressive news publication in Seattle, published an article that, again, tells the truth about why you're seeing the high gas prices at the pump. I guess better late than never. The article from John Stang is headlined, Why Washington Gas Prices Are the Nation's Highest. In it, he writes, referencing Todd Myers, Myers noted that a gallon of gasoline produces 1/100th of a metric ton of pollution. With auction prices hovering around $50 per metric ton, the math translates to a 50-cent increase per gallon if all the costs are passed on to drivers, he said. And then John Stang brings in a liberal voice. He says, Yoram Bauman, you can put that back up, Nicole, Yoram Bauman, a liberal economist from Salt Lake City, Utah, which in 2016 tried and failed to pass Initiative 732 to establish a different cap and trade program, coupled with a 1% drop in the state sales tax, agrees with Myers' calculations. Bauman, again a liberal economist, said I-732 supporters expected cap and trade costs to be passed on to consumers at the pump. Quote, the idea that the oil companies are going to suck it up is not in the realm of possibility. So now that most people are debunking and rejecting the claim from Governor Jay Inslee that the carbon tax is not going to increase prices at the pump, now that he can no longer spew that without people telling him that's a lie, what does he do? Oh, well, he has to move on to another lie because that old lie isn't working anymore because people can see what's happening at the gas pump. And so what is Governor Jay Inslee's new lie? Well, he has been trotting out the new lie of, oh, this is the result of the greed of oil companies. And in fact, I think it was he first uttered that line on Cairo 7. We played this clip before, but I want to play it again for you. The first time Jay Inslee switched to his new lie.
Well, what I would say is the author of these gas prices are the oil and gas companies, and their rapaciousness, their greed is beyond imagination. They're making 80 cents a gallon profit on every gallon. That is 20 times higher profit than in other states. And I think the legislature needs to look at this issue to restrain some of this price gouging that's going on. Now, I also think there's ways to restrain the cost to the oil and gas companies by having a combined market for pollution credits with California and Quebec. So I think we need some further action on this to restrain some of these rapacious policies. But we are not going to go backwards on making polluters pay. Our kids should not have to breathe this pollution.
But would you agree that this could be a direct result of the oil companies passing the amount of money that they have to pay to the state on to you?
Yes, there is some of that. Now, much of it is not related to this law because the oil companies have shut down a major pipeline, allegedly for maintenance, although why they do it in the summer, I don't know. That has restrained supply, and that has been a significant reason for these recent cost increases. It's not all this law.
So anyway, so he moves on from this law isn't going to increase gas prices to, okay, this is increased gas prices, but it's not the fault of the policy. It's the fault of the greedy oil companies because they are raking in record profits and they're just letting all of us poor schleps suffer at the pump. So Todd Myers, who was right about everything, remember, right about it all. And it took the mainstream media about 2 years to actually agree with the fact that Todd Myers was right from the very beginning about what the carbon tax would do to you and I at the pump. So Todd Myers is like, okay, let me fact check, since the mainstream media refuses to do it, the governor's latest claim. And the claim, frankly, from a lot of Democratic lawmakers that, oh no, it's just oil companies being really, really greedy and passing too much cost, more than they need, onto consumers. So this is the latest article from Todd Myers with the Washington Policy Center. Governor's latest excuse for increasing gas prices is wrong, according to his own source. So we invited Todd Myers back on the show to debunk Governor Jay Inslee's latest lie. Todd Myers, welcome back to Undivided.
Thanks for having me on. It's good to join you.
First, I should say congratulations, because it seems like the mainstream media is finally starting to come around to your side of things.
Sort of. There are certainly some. There are others who continue to find excuses. But yes, it's, we're making progress.
Yeah. So your latest article, Governor's latest excuse for increasing gas prices is wrong, according to his own source. So let's set this up for people for a moment, because, of course, there was the denial, right, from the governor and the Department of Ecology that their cap and trade program would even raise gas prices. Well, now gas prices are going up. So their secondary excuse is, well, that has to do with the greed of oil companies. You're saying that also is not true.
Yeah. So now that they've sort of had to admit that prices are going up faster than Oregon and Idaho and other places, it's like, well, why? So, of course, they find somebody else to blame, and it's easy to blame the oil industry. The fundamental thing they haven't explained is why the greed of oil industry happens to stop right at Washington's border. But nonetheless, they have a statistic that they have cited from a group called the Oil Price Information Service, OPIS, which is actually owned by Dow Jones. So Dow Jones has a number of sector-specific analytical groups. This is the one for the oil market. And what they say is that what they claimed is that oil company profits in Washington state are higher than almost anywhere else in the country, over 80 cents a gallon. Now, I didn't know what the truth was, but your BS detector goes off when it's like 80 cents a gallon is a lot of profit for a product that is between $4 and $5 a gallon. So I did something the governor did not, something that others like Senator Wynn and Representative Rommel did not. Climate Solutions, which is an activist group, I reached out to OPIS and said, what does this number mean? Because it's very confusing to me. And what they said is that instead of it being oil company profits, it's not the oil company and it's not profit. It is gas stations, and it is the margin that they mark up between the purchase of wholesale and what they sell at the pump. So that's how much gas stations take per gallon, and all of their expenses have to go into that, including rent, labor, credit card fees, all those sorts of things. So the governor, who has the entire Washington state government at his fingertips, didn't have a single person actually check to see what that data meant before he went on TV and made the claim.
Well, of course not, because that would counter the governor's narrative. And also, if I'm reading into this, and correct me if I'm mistaken, but when you talk about all the things that have to go into that price for gas station owners, isn't that also an indictment of how expensive it is to run a business in Washington state?
Yeah, I think, prices are higher in Western Washington than in Eastern Washington for a variety of reasons. One is rent and property taxes and all those other things are going to be higher. The costs of labor are going to be higher. One of the things that I didn't realize was credit cards. Credit cards take about 3%. So if your cost is $5 a gallon, well, that's 15 cents. So now, 80 cents a gallon, now you're 85 cents a gallon, you're down 15 cents. That's a big chunk. So there's a lot of different things that go in there. But again, it's not the oil companies. Even stations that are branded Chevron or Shell or things like that are owned by a local person, not by Chevron or Shell. But most gas stations are like Costco, Fred Meyer, Safeway, things like that. That's the amount that they have to do that. So yes, business costs in general indicate, contribute to that high margin. The other thing that's interesting is that they're actually selling fewer gallons of gas. So as they sell less, the margin has to go up because their overhead costs are essentially fixed. So you have to make up all those overhead costs on fewer gallons. So that drives the margin up. So the irony is that an increasing margin may actually indicate less profitability because it shows that, that you're struggling even more to make up your overhead costs. And that's actually what we've seen is that profitability per station has gone down this year. Now, my interest is in the market. I want a good, efficient market. Companies and other folks, they can figure out their own profitability. I want to make sure that people are getting the best price, but claiming that gas stations or oil companies are somehow making more profit in Washington state than elsewhere just is wrong by their own source.
So you've been right on all of this. You guessed what the increase would be from the carbon tax almost to the penny. You've started to see some mainstream outlets acknowledge that, yes, that is the case. So now that you're saying and you're providing the analysis to back it up that, no, this isn't a result of gas and oil greed, do you think that the governor's office will be forced, or will they willingly back away from that claim?
So what I have already seen is a shift in their messaging. So for instance, Senator Joe Nguyen, who's the chair of the Energy and Environment Committee in the state Senate, has already changed his message. And so there was an article in the Seattle Times where he wants a new law that looks at oil company profits. And his message there was, we have no idea how much profit they're taking. Well, that completely contradicts the statement from a week ago where they claimed to know down to the penny how much profit they were taking.
Right. How can you say it's a result of oil company greed and profit if you're now saying you don't know?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So it's just, even if what they say is 180 degrees opposite of what they said yesterday, right? The theme is common, which is it's somebody else's fault and we need more government. So they just compound the problem. Now, I have long said that, we should do things to, reduce CO2 emissions, to reduce the risk. But the things we're doing now, we find the way to do the most expensive and least effective ways consistently. And then when that turns out to be the case, they just double down on those bad ideas. And it's really frustrating. And I wrote an entire book about positive things we can do. That's what we should be talking about, is here's empowering things that we should do, right? Time to think small, which is small rather than big government. And I sort of get tired of having to constantly fact check the nonsense that we see coming out of Olympia and out of the governor's office and things like that. But people want to do something for the environment, and they're grasping for that. So when they hear these things, they're inclined to believe it. So I have to keep fact checking, but really what we ought to be doing is turning to ways to actually be effective. But unfortunately, the state of politics in Washington State, we're not there. We're still stuck on the blame game. We're still stuck on politics. We're still stuck on division because that works politically.
Yeah, and the reason you have to keep fact checking is because nobody else will do it apparently, or else I don't think we'd be in this position. And it's not too much to ask of them to simply own the policy and the consequences of it. So Todd Myers with the Washington Policy Center, we appreciate your time and we appreciate your fact checking.
Thank you very much. It's always nice to chat with you.
Yeah, and it goes without saying, a think tank should not have to be the one fact-checking these things, right? I mean, I don't think that we would have been caught so off guard by, and I think by we, I mean sort of most of the populace that gets their information from the mainstream media. I don't think it would have been such a surprise for folks to see gas prices increase in the way that they did had the media really forced honesty from Jay Inslee, from the Department of Ecology, from Democrats from the very beginning, and not been so quick to believe what was being spouted. I mean, remember we showed a King 5 headline from just a couple months ago when the gas prices had already increased like 45 cents. And they were still following that line from the governor saying, oh, but it's not us. It's not that policy. And so how people's tunes have changed now that public opinion is like really wanting to get to the bottom of what's going on is pretty absurd. It's pretty ridiculous. So we'll continue to follow that. Coming up next, there's a debate happening today in the King County Council about whether to fast-track the rehiring of people who were fired over the vaccine. We're going to have a conversation about what exactly would stop them from doing that and why they haven't started to do that already. But first, I've been talking about my friends over at First Mark Insurance. Mike and I are now members of the First Mark family. I highly recommend you do what we did. Take the First Mark Challenge. You can do it virtually, and this is what it entails. You show up to your virtual meeting. You give them information on the insurance you already have. You talk to them about your insurance needs. They go out at no cost to you and they shop the market to try to figure out, can they get you better insurance for a better price? Mike and I, we knew going into the First Mark Challenge that we were underinsured, which was a bit terrifying. Dave Taylor is the CEO of First Mark, and he said that's pretty common for people who take the challenge.
So the risk is if you get in an auto accident, and you don't have enough coverage, and let me clarify, you get in an auto accident that's your fault, and you don't have enough coverage, then they can come after you personally for any additional amounts over and above your coverage limit. And that means things like your retirement plan, or come after your equity in your home, or garnish your wages. So it's a big thing. And like with you and Mike, I just think most people haven't had someone take the time to explain it to them in terms they can understand and show them the how inexpensive it is to actually get the correct coverage.
Yeah, and that's really the key. You might be hearing that and saying, well, I need my cheap insurance that I've got right now. If I get better insurance, it's going to cost me more money, and I can't afford that. It didn't cost us more money. We have way better insurance, way more insurance, much better customer service, and we are paying the same amount that we were paying before. So it's really a no-brainer for us, and I've heard from people who've taken the First Mark Challenge, and they're saving hundreds or thousands of dollars a year, and their insurance is just as good as it was or better. So speaking of gas prices, if you're being crushed under the weight of those gas prices, this is a really good opportunity to save a little bit of cash. Nicole and I met a girl the other day, a woman the other day, who said she's saving $100 a month, which is $1,200 a year. So that's awesome. FirstMarkInsurance.com. FirstMarkInsurance.com. Take the First Mark Challenge. They work for you. Okay, happening today, the King County Council is debating whether to not just rehire people who were fired over the vaccine mandate, a mandate that's no longer in place, but whether to fast track those individuals who want to come back and work for the county, which I imagine a lot of them probably don't. But here's the article from King 5 News. King County Council to consider rehiring employees fired over the vaccine mandate. And it talks about how there are some significant shortages in places like the sheriff's office. So there's 120 deputy positions, or 120 give or take, that remain vacant. 33 people were fired in the King County Sheriff's Office over the vaccine mandate. And so Reagan Dunn, who is a Republican on the King County Council, is the one who's trying to push for this, not only to allow those people to have their jobs back, now that His Holiness Dow Constantine has said that the vaccine mandate isn't in place there anymore, but to say that you're going to be fast-tracked back into employment with the county. You're going to come in at the same level of seniority that you had before. And I have to wonder, why is this even open to debate? And Nicole, feel free to jump in. what remaining reason would there be, especially with the staffing shortages, not to do this, besides what I think was the rationale for the vaccine mandate to begin with, obedience?
Yeah, I definitely think
It's
that's part of
obedience.
it. It's we weeded out the ones that don't comply.
Yeah.
So why do we need them back?
That's all it was. For the better part of a year and a half. And again, I'll give them like a little sliver at the beginning when we thought vaccines were going to be something else that they weren't. Like, oh, we got to do this. But after that became clear, it was about nothing besides obedience.
Right.
So if this is not something that the King County Council does, just keep in mind, there's no rationale. And they would fail to fast track the rehiring of these people at the expense of public safety, at the expense of services like King County Metro and other agencies. And it's all political.
Yeah.
There is no, if you can think of a remaining rationale not to fast track the rehiring of people who want to come back, which I wouldn't. I mean, it's easy to say, like if you need a job and you can pick back up where you left off.
Specifically, I think the ferry workers, they took such a huge hit, and the ferry system has suffered, right?
Oh, but who did Inslee blame? Were you here or were you
Oh, I
gone?
probably was here. What?
Inslee blamed Tim Eyman.
Oh, yeah, no, I was here. Yes.
Speaking of lies,
Mm-hmm.
speaking of lies that Inslee peddles that people just eat up,
Right.
Inslee blames, instead of, we fired people over the vaccine mandate, a 23-year-old Tim Eyman initiative that
Yeah.
reduced the price of car tabs.
Right.
That's really quickly.
Yeah.
A politician is only that bold in feeding us absolute bull when they know they'll get away with it.
Right. Oh, yeah. And why wouldn't he in the state? It's crazy. The media just rolls with it. But yeah, no, I mean, I think during that time period, I mean, we heard from a lot of departments, but man, the ferry system suffered.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people that were not supportive of the vax, and they suffered.
Well, yeah, and it's not, I said this before when we were talking about Jay Inslee's lies about the ferries, it's not just an inconvenience,
Right.
the ferry system issue. Like if you're trying to catch a bus from point A to point B, you might be able to find some other ways to get where you're going, but you can't find another way off an island.
Right.
Unless you're going to hire a private helicopter to get
Right.
you where you're going.
I mean, you could drive around some of them, but not all of them.
No.
And also, I just think that it's a skill and a talent that takes time. So you can't just train somebody in a couple weeks to run a ferry boat.
Well, and
So.
that's the other thing that makes sense with rehiring these people in a streamlined manner, because that's a money-saving endeavor as well, is that they've already, if you're going to bring them back in, especially to do the job they were doing before, that's a no-brainer. You don't have to hire someone new on.
Right.
They don't have to go through all that process. Not that King County cares about saving taxpayer money, but it certainly would. So I hope that there's no pushback to this. And if there isn't, we'll talk about it next week on the show.
Absolutely.
We'll give them the little golf clap
Right.
if they do what needs to be done. But at this point, it's time to let politics go from all of this. It makes no sense in the world that we're still having these
I
conversations.
always feel bad when it's led by Reagan Dunn. I'm always like, oh man,
Oh.
go Reagan.
Well,
because he's really working against the crowd there.
But the thing is, that would be the reason it's not successful.
Yep.
Is they're like, it's a Republican's idea.
Yep.
No.
Forget it.
Oh, it's exhausting. It truly is exhausting. Welcome back, by the way, Nicole. We'll
Oh,
talk
thank
more
you.
about your time in Vegas
Okay.
coming up momentarily, and we're going to bring you in for our next segment because it's relevant to you. Let's get to our segment, Unbelievable. All right. Jason Aldean's music video for Try This in a Small Town has been canceled by the internet. We'll dive into sort of the video and the imagery and stuff, but man, these people are it's such a stretch. So Ashton Pittman, he is a news editor for the Mississippi Free Press. So Jason Aldean films this music video called Don't Try That in a Small Town, something like that. And he does it in front of this old historic courthouse in Columbia, Tennessee. It's the Maury County Courthouse. So Ashton Pittman, again, a news editor, points out that this particular courthouse has a pretty shady past historically. He wrote, Jason Aldean shot this at the site where a white lynch mob strung Henry Cote up at the Maury County Courthouse in Columbia, Tennessee, after dragging his body through the streets with a car in 1927. That's where Aldean chose to sing about murdering people who don't respect the police. So again, this is a news editor, by the way. But look, that's a horrifying history, right? And we all know that our country has some really awful things about its past, including lynchings and racism. And that's an awful story about what happened in front of this courthouse. But it was 100 years ago. It was 100 years ago. So Jason Aldean, and I'll give you a little more context into the video itself, but in response to that criticism that Jason Aldean filmed this music video in front of a courthouse where a black man was lynched, he was drove through the streets, and there are people who find that distasteful given the lyrics in the video, CMT has removed the video. This is from the Wall Street Journal. CMT removes Jason Aldean's video for try that in a small town because it was filmed at the site of a 1927 lynching. So I'll read that we didn't want to play the song because of copyright issues, but we're going to show you who are watching on the stream some of the video, and I'll read to you some of the lyrics, but it's very clear that he's talking about these rioters that we saw in the country, especially in 2020, and an increase in crime. And it was the gist of it is like, try that stuff in a small town and see what happens to you. So Nicole, you can roll some of that video and I'll just read the verse. Sucker punch somebody on a sidewalk, carjack an old lady at a red light, pull a gun on the owner of a liquor store. You think it's cool? Well, act a fool if you like. Cuss out a cop, spit in his face, stomp on the flag and light it up. Yeah, you think you're tough. Well, try that in a small town. See how far you make it down the road. Round here, we take care of our own. You cross that line, it won't take long for you to find out. I recommend you don't try that in a small town. And it goes on from there, and you're seeing the imagery of riots that happened, anti-police riots, for instance, and then he's playing this song with an American flag behind him in front of this courthouse that, again, has this really dark, shaded history. So Jason Aldean put out this pretty lengthy statement. I'll read, I think I can read all of it or part of it. Jason Aldean said, in the past 24 hours, I've been accused of releasing a pro-lynching song. And that is what the accusation is. That there's no imagery of lynching in the video. I want to note that. But the fact that he's standing in front of a courthouse talking about, yes, vigilante justice, which I'm not a believer in, by the way, in front of a courthouse where a lynching happened 100 years ago. People are saying it's pro-lynching, which is quite the stretch. He said, in the past 24 hours, I've been accused of releasing a pro-lynching song, a song that has been out since May, and was subject to a comparison that I, direct quote, was not too pleased with the nationwide BLM protests. These references are not only meritless, but dangerous. There is not a single lyric in the song that references race or points to it, and there isn't a single video clip that isn't real news footage. And while I can try and respect others to have their own interpretation of a song with music, this one goes too far. As so many have pointed out, I was present at Route 91, where so many lost their lives, and our community, that's where the nation's, I think it's still the nation's deadliest mass shooting happened at that country music festival in Vegas, where so many lost their lives, and our community recently suffered another heartbreaking tragedy. No one, including me, wants to continue to see senseless headlines or families ripped apart. Try that in a small town, for me, refers to the feeling of a community that I had growing up, where we took care of our neighbors regardless of differences of background or belief, because they were our neighbors, and that was above any differences. My political views have never been something I've hidden from, and I know that a lot of us in this country don't agree on how we get back to a sense of normalcy, where we go at least a day without a headline that keeps us up at night. But the desire for it, that's what the song is about. So look, we can have disagreements about should he have known? Was that the right place to film the video? Should he have been more sensitive to the history of that courthouse? Again, assuming he even knew, 100 years ago, what the history of that courthouse is. I refuse to buy into the label of the song as pro-lynching, when again, there is not a single imagery or reference to lynching. I think that is an extreme stretch. But why I really truly believe the backlash to this is unbelievable. There's a news guy, his name's Colin Rugg, on Twitter, who I'm just going to read his tweet because it sums up exactly how I feel about this whole situation. I read the lyrics in the Jason Aldean song, which are basically anti-crime. He's opposed to crime, right? So this tweet from Colin Rugg reads as follows, and it is such an excellent point. He said, country music television has pulled Jason Aldean's music video, Try That in a Small Town, in response to media outrage. In the music video, Aldean calls out left-wing violence, specifically violence against law enforcement. Apparently, this is controversial and hateful, according to the left. And then he writes out some of the lyrics. Sucker punch somebody on a sidewalk, carjack an old lady at a red light, pull a gun on the owner of a liquor store. You think it's cool. Well, act a fool if you like. Cuss out a cop, spit in his face, stomp on the flag and light it up. Yeah, you think you're tough. He said, he made the point that people rap constantly about drugs, about murdering people. I mean, think of some of the lyrics from some of the rap songs when we were growing up about sex, drugs, violence, being gang members, killing people, committing shootings, all measure of things that are apparently, according to the media, perfectly fine. Any measure of violent discussion in rap music, perfectly fine. But when you have a white country music singer who sings a song about standing up to lawlessness, not okay. Got to cancel him. Got to take down the music video. Does that seem even in the realm of fair or sane? Now, if you took issue with all of it, if you had songs and rap music, for instance, where they were glorifying violence, glorifying gang membership, et cetera, then and the media as an institution was standing up to those and saying, oh no, those music videos have to be taken down off MTV, off VH1, whatever it is. And then you also said that about this Jason Aldean video. I would feel completely differently. It's the moral inconsistency that I have an issue with. Either we're okay with the glorification of violence in music videos or we're not. Now, Jason Aldean is saying in this song, basically vigilante justice. Like, you try these things in a small town, see how far you get down the street, suggesting, in my opinion, that they'd probably take care of business on their own, which I don't agree with either. But it is not any worse than thousands of other songs that explicitly talk about committing acts of violence, committing crimes, etc. Nicole, are you going to continue to be a Jason Aldean fan?
Oh, yeah, I love Jason. I mean, I think his wife has not been secretive with her political beliefs as well. She's a big Trump supporter, and she's been attacked for that before. And of course he's going to get attacked for this. Of course he is. It's who plays into it, and we see people's true colors. And it's funny that people say, I mean, I've seen tweets of saying, oh yeah, like, we're dumb, Jason, that like, we don't know what you're talking about. Like, this is secretive. Like, they're acknowledging that it's not mentioned, but saying what he's implying. Yeah. And I just think it's funny that people know people's beliefs and heart, even. Yeah.
But we're in your mind, Jason.
But they claim the opposite. They say that, they claim it's just hypocritical in the way that they measure people's hearts and minds.
It's political. It's political and hypocritical.
It's all politics. Yeah. And they're just using, they manipulate a situation. And I do think that the Bud Lights of the world and all of these companies that are really feeling this backlash, I think it's people saying enough is enough. And now people are saying, oh, CMT, we're done, because CMT, bowed out and caved to the mob. And I think that's going to get stronger and stronger, and stop caving. People, I mean, that's the only way to get this message across, that, the majority is done with this ridiculous behavior and trying to divide. Say, here's the video that says, we've had enough. We don't want violence. We don't want, this spitting on cops and violence in the street, and women old ladies getting carjacked. And that can even be taken out of context and taken out of,
pro-lynching.
Yeah,
pro-lynching.
It's called pro-lynching.
Yeah, which we did have an old lady carjacked in our state. And so it's like somebody's trying to take a stand to violence, and they're like, pro-lynching. We know what's in your heart. You're a terrible person.
Right, and he lives in Tennessee. He went to a Tennessee courthouse. So I assume that there's probably multiple courthouses in the South and that may have had similar histories. He went to the one that, the courthouse that's closest to where he lives, probably. And how are you supposed to... how are you supposed to know the context of everything? I mean, I guess he could have gone back that far, but also courthouse represent justice in this country. Right. And so to take it and put a
that seems like the more likely tie, where he's like, we want somewhere that's reflective of justice. We're talking about crime,
but instead, it's like, let's look for this
1927
terrible thing
lynching,
that happened 100 years ago.
But you make a good point that there's probably a lot of places in the South, in this country, that have been the scene of lynchings.
Right.
And that's horrible. But in Tennessee, I imagine that happened quite a bit. Again, unfortunately. But the idea that rather than use your brain and say, okay, he probably picked that location because it's a courthouse, we're talking about justice. You're like, oh, he picked that location and included those lyrics in his song because of a 1927 lynching, and this has some reflection of it. It's like, you are literally, you are searching for things to call racist. You are searching for ways to be the victim and to be offended. But I'll also point out with CMT, and we're spending way more time on this than I thought we would, but I'll also point out with CMT that I can think of several country music songs that have, glorified violence in some way. For instance, Gunpowder and Lead. Like you're talking about, even though it's an abuser, you're talking about shooting someone, right? So it's like, okay, so you don't have an issue with that. So this has to be like what you are now believing is a racial undertone of this particular song, which is such a stretch. And again, like you said, goes against sort of the audience of country music, just like Bud Light, and it's not going to end well for them.
Nope, don't think
so. Anyway, wild. We have another country music story coming up.
Of course we do.
Just for you, because we missed you so much. All right, coming up after this, I'm sure you've seen the clip of Biden and the president of Israel. I'm going to talk about what's going on with President Biden, but I really don't think it has anything to do with his age. I'm going to be honest. All right, before that, we've been talking about our friend Wes Jones, an awesome real estate agent in our area. He and his team have an innovative marketing strategy to make sure the most eyeballs get on your home so you can get the best possible offers, which everyone wants, but they take things a step further, and they will help you make sure that your home is in the best possible condition before it hits the market. Here's Wes Jones talking about their listing boost concierge service.
So we're going to come in, number one, and we're going to inspect a home, do a pre-inspection. We're going to find out all those little hidden bugs that, a buyer may be concerned with. And if a seller wants to do some cosmetic updates, whether it's flooring, whether it's lighting, countertops, even a kitchen, we're going to help guide them through that. So the Listing Boost Concierge Service, what we can do is we can project manage those rehab projects. We have a list of contractors and preferred vendors that we like to work with and have a ton of experience with, and we'll take that off a seller's hands. We'll go ahead and run that project for them, and we even have some options where they can pay at closing out of their net proceeds.
Yeah, talk about the absolute stress that would take off your shoulders, especially if you've got to sell your home quick, just to know that, hey, they can do all of that for me. They can manage it for me. I don't even have to pay for it up front if I don't have the funds. So sellwithwes.com, check out his website, sellwithwes.com, a better way to sell your home. Okay, I'm sure you've seen it by now, but I want to have a conversation with you all about President Biden's mental state, because I actually think this was a clip that was pretty roundly like WTF on the internet, where people are like, wow, he's not doing well. I've told Nicole before, I don't like just making fun of him for the sake of making fun of him and, whatever gaffes he has because he's having issues. But I've always said that it is a completely legitimate conversation to talk about the mental well-being and the vitality of the president of the free world. So anyway, he had a little sit-down press conference thing, more of like a media spray, where it gives him a chance to come in and get the two leaders on video chatting with each other. So he was sitting down with the president of Israel, and he is reading. If you're watching, it might just look like he's dozing off, which he might be a little bit, but he does have some papers in his lap that I think he's reading from, which is why he's looking down. But as you'll hear, the president is essentially incoherent. Here's the clip.
And we brought Israelis and Palestinians together at a political level, and Akwa and all Shram. Yes. And as I affirmed the Prime Minister.
What does that even mean? And you can see the look on the face of the Israeli president. He's sort of looking back at the media like, is this okay? What's going on? Is this normal? And then, of course, because gaslighting is so mainstreamed for, I would say both sides of the political aisle, but in particular, Democrats have really mastered the art of gaslighting on social media. President Biden tweets out, or whoever controls his Twitter account, this photo of the same meeting, the same scene. Today, I welcome President Herzog of Israel to the White House to celebrate the close bond between our nations based on shared interests and democratic values. And it's a picture where he happens to be hyper engaged, and he's sitting there, legs crossed, hands folded, totally alert and aware of what's happening. I mean, of course, they're not going to send the picture out where he looks like he's falling asleep. But if you had just seen that, you'd be like, oh, Biden's doing great. He's not doing great. And to me, it really doesn't have anything to do with his age. there are so many people in their 80s and even into their 90s who are sharp as a tack. And so I think focusing on simply the age of the president is a mistake. And you have, because I think, is Trump the same age as Biden? Like, they're pretty close. I mean, Trump is fine. You know, I don't like him. He says weird stuff, but he's coherent, and they're pretty close in age. So Nancy Pelosi went on Morning Joe, and the subject of the president's age came up. And, I mean, not that it's a surprise from MSNBC, but the giggling that they engaged with Nancy Pelosi on this subject is absolutely insane.
It is. It's relative. He's younger than I am, so he's a kid to me as well. The president is.
Like the giggling. And so she's talking about, age is relative. I agree with her that age is relative. I agree with her that age does not necessarily make you qualified or unqualified for a position, because there's a lot of people that age who are doing just fine. Joe Biden is not one of them. And the fact that the Democratic Party continues to entertain the concept, even if they don't believe it behind the scenes, but publicly, that Joe Biden is not only going to run for president until the end of the 2024 cycle and is the party's nominee, but that he would even be capable of serving another 4 years in office through the year 2028 is absolutely offensive. And I would think even for Democratic voters, that has to be offensive, that they think so little of your intelligence that they actually expect you to believe the notion that that's their guy, that that's who they're going with, and that he is the best person to serve the country. It's one of the most disastrous things about party politics. They're just feeding that to the people who support them, to the people who vote for them. They know full well, and I believe this to my core, that Joe Biden is not going to be the nominee, that they're going to find a reason and excuse behind the scenes to throw him out and bring Gavin Newsom in or something. And they're just playing y'all like a fiddle for money in the meantime. It's absolutely ridiculous. Okay, I've been coming up next, we'll get to questions, comments from the stream. We'll check in on Nicole and talk about her trip to Vegas and our upcoming trip to San Diego for my bachelorette party. But speaking of the beach, I've been talking about Eastside Weight Loss Clinic, eastsideweightloscclinic.com. I am down 36 pounds on the program. I'm feeling great. I haven't gained it back. I started the program in November. I lost most of that weight in just 2 months, and I've been able to keep it off, which has been awesome. Just in time for my bachelorette party, just in time for my wedding in September. And I've heard from so many of you who have found success on the program. To me, the program is, they keep it simple. It's easy to follow. They tell you exactly what to do. That's the kind of program that works for me. You can cook your own food at home. You can eat out. There's no prepackaged meals, no counting calories. If you think the program might be a fit, just call Dr. Ryan Coogan and his team, schedule a free 15-minute consultation, and they'll just go over it for you. So you can set that up, eastsideweightloscclinic.com, eastsideweightloscclinic.com. Again, a free 15-minute consultation. They'll go over the program. You can decide if it's something that you think you could succeed on or not. And you can go from there. So eastsideweightloscclinic.com. Okay, let's get to questions and comments from the stream today. First, Nicole, how was Las Vegas? Hot? Hello?
Yeah.
Hot?
Oh, yes, hot. It was hot. It was very, I thought you were like going to say the D word after that or something. I don't know. I was waiting for another word. Like, I thought you were going to say hot damn or something.
Did you just swear on my podcast?
No, that's not a swear word.
Hot dang.
Depends on how you use it.
Was it good?
It was very hot. It got up to, I think, 118, 116, 17.
Not interested
It was
in that.
very hot. So we did not do a lot of outside walking like you sometimes do in Vegas.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of pool and a lot of air conditioning. And it was great, though. Not a lot of gambling. Actually, none. Which is, I will usually sit down and pull a slot machine for a little bit, but not even that.
I gambled over the weekend, and you didn't. I went to Bill Burr at Emerald Queen Casino with our friend Jessamine, and I'm not going to say how much because Mike's probably listening, but I lost some money on blackjack.
Oh no.
Yeah. Honestly, I lost some money because of a miscommunication between the dealer and I on a big bet. I think Emerald Queen Casino owes me a few $100. If I'm being honest. Oh, no, it was like $250. I think that's what I got out of the ATM. But I was up. I was way up. And I made a big bet. And then we had a little miscommunication. And then I lost it all. So anyway, we'll talk about us leaving tomorrow in a moment. But let's get to some comments on gas and Inslee. Bill Biz with a $20 super chat. Thank you, sir. Many of us who live here in Bainbridge Island were peed when, Bill, are you trying to get me to donate money to the curse jar?
I think curse jar is reserved for the words that we would get fined by the FCC if we were on.
Is that not one of them?
Radio raves. No.
Oh, okay. Peed off. Many of us who live here in Bainbridge Island were peed when Inslee gutted personnel in the ferry system. By the way, please keep Jay locked away on the mainland after his term, lest he further negatively influence our community. Yeah, he's got a house on Bainbridge, right? Hey, Bill Biz, you guys could be best friends.
There you go.
Go over there, see what he's up to. Country Guy says, does he expect employers to absorb the cost of the ridiculous long-term care ripoff? All he knows about business is how to put people out of it. Exactly. No other thing would you expect a cost added to doing business to be passed along to the consumer.
Right.
That's
It doesn't
or
happen.
to not be passed along to the consumer.
Right.
That doesn't happen. That's ridiculous. Nick said, I heard gas is so high in Washington that Inslee can't afford to run his 2-car funeral. We should ask him.
I don't know the sound effects buttons yet. Daryl has not taught me that. He's trying to
Daryl
make me
did
look bad.
He did a pretty good job while you're gone. In fact,
I know
our show was 3 minutes late today. It wasn't late when Daryl was here.
I think he sabotaged it.
In our defense, we were trying to tape that interview with Todd Myers, and we didn't tape it until like 20 minutes before the show, and so we were waiting for it to turn around. So we were waiting because we had content for you, and it was such a last-minute addition to the show. So we were 3 minutes late. So that wasn't Nicole's fault. All right, Robert says, watch for the bait and switch to a pay per mile as the solution to the gas tax. Easier for them to rip us off. Yeah, and there's already conversations that are happening about that. Matthew said, of course it would have been nice if the media had just done journalism and research claims made by Inslee, Department of Ecology, etc. Is it too much to ask?
Is it too much?
Apparently it
be.
is. Let me see. Country Guy. Again, is this a new commenter?
No, yeah, apparently.
Yeah. Matthew, most of what comes from the Seattle media are from reading Inslee's talking points and press releases.
He was responding to that
I mean,
comment.
sometimes it genuinely sounds like it's an exact ripoff from a press release. Like, oh, the government sent it to us. Guess it's true.
Oh, I know that's what's happening.
Oh, it's
They
laziness.
just take and read.
Yeah. Art says, facts. Why muddy up the subject with facts? Lies are much neater. Yeah. On the whole Jason Aldean debacle, Grit City Kitty with a $19.99 super chat. I'm wondering if there's a reason for the
I just to come on under
stands out.
Biz.
It's always leftists who hear racist dog whistles the rest of us don't listen to. Yeah, it's like, why is racism always at the front of your mind? Like, are there racists? Of course, but this goes back to, again, you call one thing racist that to me is such a stretch. The next time somebody, if they put out a real legitimate racist video, people are just going to tune out. Matthew says, can you imagine if Toby Keith released courtesy of the red, white, and blue today, there would be an S-storm. That's true. Oh, you know what other song? I actually really like this song, and I should not admit this, but it's so, like, it would be so inappropriate. It'd never be allowed today. Tim McGraw, Cherokee Outlaw.
No, it's called Indian Outlaw.
Oh, okay, but it's not Indian Outlaw.
Cherokee in it. Yeah, they've actually acknowledged that. There's been discussion about that one being canceled, but it's supposed to be a tribute, right? So they've, I don't know.
But no, it's
been
like
able to slide by.
Every stereotype about Native Americans is like included in that song. But I think the point is it would never be released today, right? But maybe rightfully so. Like, that's one where it's like, okay.
Yeah.
That's like a parody of a Native American.
Right. We're just evolving. We're evolving beings.
Evolving is fine.
Yes.
Evolving is fine. There's a lot of things reasonable people would never say today that they used to say in the past for good reason.
Right.
We evolve. But I think that there's a difference between a refusal to evolve and manufacturing outrage over a lynching that happened 100 years ago that you think somehow plays into Jason Aldean's decision of where to shoot a music video in 2023.
It's cute, too, because all they do is give these a platform. They just gave them free publicity. The song's #1. That's what you do with this manufactured.
Yeah. Save it for actual controversy.
Yeah.
Todd says, as someone that grew up in a small town in Kentucky, I wonder if he got the accent. This song is exactly the attitude in these areas. They look out for each other, defend themselves and others around them. Yeah. And I mean, there is a lawful ability to defend yourself in some of these areas, stand your ground, etc. Now, I don't agree with vigilante justice, like going out to shoot someone if that's what they're thinking who robbed a store. That's vigilante justice. But there is a difference between that and legal self-defense.
There's also maybe an intimidation factor that he's playing into. So it doesn't mean take that, chase that person down and beat them up or whatever it is.
Yeah.
He's saying it's an intimidation factor, right?
Yeah. Well, he never says, like, we'll take it in our own hands by shooting them dead in the street. No, I don't know what he means, right? There's clearly like an aspect of we're gonna handle this ourselves.
It's a numbers thing, right? So okay, if Black Lives Matter or different protests that were happening all over the country, it was numbers in the streets. The officers were outnumbered, right? So, but try that in a small town where you're outnumbered, right?
Yeah.
So that might be the gist of it.
Matthew says, CMT, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Yeah, we'll see. People are fed up, as Nicole said. Glenn said, let's see, explicit rap, rape, killing, gang violence. Yep, this is way worse. Are you kidding me? Aldean is a brave soul. Lieutenant Dan, hey buddy, said, unbelievable. Another example of overusing the term racism to attack your political foes. This is getting exhausting. But that's the point, is that it has to get to the point where we're so exhausted by it. Right? And that's what I want. It's like, you can't just let these things. It's important to bring attention to these issues and to explain why it is so exhausting and why reasonable people are going to speak up about it. And they're not just going to be like, oh, another little thing. It's like, no, stop doing that. Like CMT, stop doing that. Bud Light, stop doing that. It's ridiculous. Right. Okay, all right. That's it for questions and comments for today. But we're not done talking about country music because Nicole wasn't here yesterday. And in our sanity check, I was like, no offense, Daryl, but I kind of wish Nicole was here for this sanity check because I have to call her out on a few things and her insane amount of picture taking, which we'll discuss momentarily. But let's talk about yesterday's sanity check again in today's sanity check. So first, let's set it back up for people who might not have seen the show yesterday, and there'll also be an opportunity for Nicole to see the video that we're going to talk about. So Miranda Lambert, who we've seen several times, I like Miranda Lambert. I think she does a good job. She stopped in the middle of a show because some women in the front row were taking a selfie. Here's the clip that went viral.
Something around the fall apart. I'm gonna stop right here for a sec, Danny. I'm sorry. These girls are worried about their selfie and not listening to the song. It's pissing me off a little bit.
So initially when that clip went viral, I was like, that was a little harsh, wasn't it? And then I saw the background video. There was another video released on TikTok, and essentially it was a person telling a story from another angle. And you see the women were doing this for a while. They're front row. They're standing up in a line, blocking people's view of Miranda Lambert with their back to the stage during a slow song. And the person in the TikTok said that others in the crowd were actually happy that she stopped the show. So I think some of the initial outrage probably was because the clip was out of context and people didn't actually know it was happening. Nicole, what say you? Are you Team Miranda on this one?
Oh, no. Oh, yes. Oh, Team Miranda. No, I'm not for
endless pictures.
And to be clear, they're not taking selfies. They're having somebody else take a photo of them. So they're getting all lined up. They're taking pictures with a flash. Somebody else is taking them. Yeah. I mean, it looks like they're doing a photo shoot during her concert while everybody's sitting down during the quiet song or the quieter song or the low ballad or whatever, a part of the song. And I think that was completely obnoxious. And I think that it's not so much the picture taking, it's the manners, right? I think people have absolutely lost their sense of
there's no self-awareness,
respect, self-awareness, manners. People just are selfish. Like I mean, my own generation, the generation after me, I mean, they're just selfish. And so that was what that was. That was pure selfishness.
These were older women, probably older than...
They look around our age.
No. First of all, don't say our age. Don't lump me in with you in the 40s. I think they looked late 40s, early 50s.
Maybe some of them.
They should have better manners than that. So I agree with
you.
But that aside, the point I made on Sanity Check yesterday is, even though this seems to have been justified, I think it's a good point for people not to live buried in their phones, not to live through the camera on their phone. Now, Nicole.
I am a picture taker.
You take way too many pictures. However, I'm going to set this up for
Okay.
I have told myself I'm not going to give you as much guff about that because when our friend Dory Monson died, you're the only one who had pictures of us with Dory.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I really value those pictures now in hindsight. So I was like, I will not be as harsh with her about her overtaking of photographs. But for the sake of your sanity, what's a good, do you ever worry that I'm just living too much through my phone? Like I'm living to take pictures to post them.
I don't think so, because that's not why I'm doing it. I'm definitely in the moment, and I like to have those memories, and that's why I take them. I take them for me, not for other people. Yeah. I mean, I am not somebody, I don't think I overpost. I typically am a one post, like this trip that I went on. I had one post for my whole Vegas trip. Yeah. I have one post if we go to a concert. Like, I don't overpost. I don't do live streaming. Nobody else cares. I'm there. I care. Yeah. They don't. And so I don't think that I overpost. I try to live in the moment. I do think that I'm careful about it as far as affecting other people around me. And it was funny. It's very relevant to the concert that I went to this weekend was Garth Brooks in Vegas. And you had to put your phone in a case when you walked in, and they lock it, and it only unlocks at certain locations.
Which I've never heard of that for a concert. I've only heard of it when we went to Bill Burr. Our phones were locked in a case. Because sometimes they're shooting Netflix specials or whatever it is, and they don't want that to get out because then people won't watch the Netflix special.
Right. And I think the excuse that Garth makes is he wants to just be able to sing whatever he wants to sing, and then it doesn't, try something new, and then it doesn't get back to people. But really, I think it's because he's a fairly scripted show, and he doesn't want it to sound scripted to the next person. But not to ruin it for everybody.
So was that hard for you? Was it like suffering, torture for you?
It was annoying to me because they promised that they would post pictures afterwards because I want to have the memory. Like Trisha joined him on stage. There was no pictures of Trisha on stage with them. You have the memory in
here.
I know. But you never know when this is going to fade. This might fade someday.
That's true.
But I think that, so they promised pictures to be posted afterwards, and there was like 5. And so that was annoying to me that there wasn't pictures of, the moments. But it wasn't that big of a deal either. Yeah. I was separated from my group, so that was annoying not to be able to get a hold of my group members and say, like, are you all right? Let's meet over here. But we figured it out. And it was nice to not see all of the, I don't care about the cute little, everybody turns their flash on and everybody, none of that. Nothing revolved around phones. So that's fine and nice. And I don't mind that. I miss the days when I always carried a digital camera with me back in the day, and always had things like that other people didn't have because I always had a camera. But at the same time, I get where it's annoying.
I think it's nice to have a moment of sanity, to be without your phone and just to live in the moment. So the other day, Lucky and I were down at the river, and we look over, and there's some other people who are like, look over there. And there's a bunch of elk crossing the river. And instantly I was like,
wish you had your phone.
And I left my phone in the car. So I was like, but then I sat there and I enjoyed the moment and just took it all in with my little doggy dog. And I was like, this is so nice. So
wow, I'm surprised your doggy dog didn't run over and chase them.
No, she was obsessed with the ball. She's like, throw the ball for me. Good. But anyway, I think it's important for all of us to have those moments of sanity where we just put the phone away and enjoy time with the people we love.
But I will say that yesterday your sanity check was like, live in the moment.
Yes.
Today, I think the sanity check can be have some respect.
Have some respect.
Acknowledge the people around you and have some respect with your phone and your photo taking and everything else and the performers and realize that it's distracting when you're being annoying in front of these people that are trying to put on a performance.
I agree. Have some respect is a good sanity check. Now, really quickly, we're not having a show tomorrow.
Correct.
Because we are going to be in San Diego for my bachelorette party.
I'm so excited, and I'm so happy that the weather, for a while, it was saying a thunderstorm was coming, and I was like,
about it
get away.
Stop talking about it.
I feel like I willed it away.
So there are a couple things you're not allowed to take photos of.
Oh, what's that?
Me in my bathing suit.
Oh,
Don't do it.
No bathing suit photos.
And me inebriated.
Okay.
You guys heard her. If I'm looking all loosey-goosey.
I would never do that to you because I would not want that done to me.
She would do it.
No,
she would do it. Okay.
I would not.
I have your pledge.
But I saw your outfit for one of the nights, and that deserves a photo.
Oh yeah, it's good. We'll share some pictures, but I appreciate you guys letting me take the time off so I can go have fun with friends and my sister's coming to San Diego. On the Sunday show, we will still have an episode of Sundays with Subscribers. It's a good one this week. Subscribers are going to get an exclusive peek at our interview with Dave Reichert, who is running as a Republican for governor. So we're going to have a sit-down interview with him. We will air it first for subscribers. Also on the Sunday show, we are going to have an update, and it's a pretty disturbing one, on the exclusive we brought you last week involving an Olympia 5th grade teacher and her transgender student, or a student who she forced to believe was transgender, who is no longer transgender. So we're going to have an exclusive update. Alicia Perkins, an Olympia School District mom who's been all over this, is going to join us. So if you're not a subscriber already, this is a really good week to become one. You can sign up at undividedpod.com. Undividedpod.com. It is just $5 a month to get access to our exclusive content and be part of our Undivided community. I will see you guys, subscribers, on Sunday. I'll see the rest of you. Hopefully I'll have a tan. Back on the live show on Monday. Nicole, good to have you back. Bye-bye.